Leo gave him that look again as if he were looking at a fool and asked, when I gave you money just now, you thought it was too much. Now you're saying 100 million. Do you have any concept of price at all? Lucas said righteously, the salary you pay me is for work and work naturally has its price. If the madam gives me money, it's a family expense. I said this figure after evaluating your and the chairman's assets. I even think it's too little. Okay, it does sound quite reasonable. Besides, have you read those domineering CEO novels? The figures in them are even more astonishing. Lucas looked yearning. Leo couldn't help but tap him on the head and said, nonsense. Lucas blushed and laughed. Softening his voice, he said seriously, Mr. Leo, don't worry. Even if the madam comes to me, I won't accept anything from her. Leo pursed his lips, lifted his eyelids, and asked, so principled? Lucas clenched his fist and said, I promised you first and signed the contract. I will definitely abide by professional ethics and play the role of a good lover well. I won't take the money and run away just because your mother offers me 100 million. He paused for a moment and said painfully, although I really want to do so. Leo said expressionlessly, I won't give you 100 million. Lucas sighed and said, I know. Even if she gives it, if the matter is exposed, I'll be forced to give it back. Do you think I'm stupid? There's a difference between reality and novels. The rich in reality are more calculating and won't be taken advantage of. It's better to get the salary from the president steadily. It's not easy to get the 100 million from the president's mother, but the salary from the president is okay. Just thinking that his salary had doubled in a roundabout way made Lucas feel happy. He said to Leo, if there's such a good job next time, come to me again. Leo said menacingly, are you sure? I never pay people for free. The evil capitalist pays 1-fold but squeezes 10-fold back. Jokes aside, one can't forget the main business. Lucas rubbed his face, forced himself to calm down, and asked Leo seriously, Mr. Leo, after doing this, will the chairman give in? Once it comes to business, Leo becomes very profound. He only gave a 2-word answer, yes. Alexander won't miss this opportunity to back down. Lucas was relieved now. The two of them put away their respective contracts. Leo said, all right, the matter is done. Let's go back. Lucas opened the door but stopped at the office door. Leo looked at him at the same time. Lucas said hesitantly, Mr. Leo, don't we need to do something? After all, they were contract lovers now. Leo wasn't sure either. He had no experience in such matters and rarely asked for Lucas's opinion. What do you want me to do? Lucas said, send me home. It should be a very common thing to send one's lover home. Leo stared at him with a straight face. I can reimburse you for the gas money. It was the first time for the two of them to act as fake underground lovers. They were both novices and it was already good enough to get the gas money reimbursed. When Lucas got home, he still felt that today was like a dream. He looked at the contract again and again. No matter how many times he looked at it, he still thought it was amazing. How could the president think of asking him to act? What a peculiar way of thinking. And he actually agreed. He was really bold enough. Just treat it as a side job. Lucas found a place to put the contract away. He sat on the bed and looked at the Mr. Leo doll beside him. This doll was a free gift when he bought instant noodles before. In the blink of an eye, almost a year had passed. The photo of Mr. Leo pasted on its head was a bit wrinkled. Lucas said to the doll, who would have thought that the boss of the side job would still be you? I'll ask for your advice in the future. The play of the fake underground lovers took effect the next day. Leo received a call from Alexander in his office. The chairman directly started scolding unfilial son. After scolding, he hung up. Leo raised his eyebrows, stared at the phone for a while, then walked out of the office and said calmly to Lucas and Henry, the chairman's matter is settled. We'll soon be notified to sign the contract with speed. The secretary and the special assistant were both stunned at the same time. It was so fast. In fact, it was even faster than they had imagined. In the afternoon, the group headquarters sent over the preliminary plan, confirming that Yaoi and Shirexien would jointly develop the SPEED project. At the same time, a letter of intent was submitted to SPEED. Chairman Mason of SPEED personally called Leo to orally congratulate the two parties on a happy cooperation. In this way, the matter was settled. Lucas was stunned by this development. The SPEED cooperation case that had troubled them for so long was actually resolved in this way. For the first time, he clearly realized that business warfare was like a real battlefield full of various variables and tugs of war with the interest chain and relationship network intertwined and indistinguishable. Leo didn't rush to celebrate the victory but called a meeting of the project team. Although things didn't meet our expectations, we've achieved the best result, Leo said. After all, Shirwei had wanted to monopolize this piece of the cake before, but now it had to share it with Shirexyan. This isn't the end for now. There's a key technology still in Shirexyan's hands. Carter will surely use this to seek maximum benefits. We must take countermeasures. Leo talked about some points to note and ideas for the future. Finally, his expression softened and he said, anyway, we've achieved a phased victory. Before the next step of work, everyone should take a break. The president rarely said something like this, so everyone cheered and heckled Mr. Leo to treat them to a meal. Leo naturally agreed. The atmosphere in the company hadn't been so relaxed and lively for a long time. Lucas also became happy. There was just one thing Lucas had to confirm with Leo. He secretly asked Leo before the dinner, Mr. Leo, will the company really not know about our relationship? Leo countered, do you think they'll believe it if I tell them? Thanks to the president's fastidiousness, everyone had no expectations for his gossip. Leo glanced at him and promised, don't worry. I said I'd limit the scope. At least it's safe here. His expression was calm, seemingly composed, yet with an indescribable calmness and confidence. If he couldn't control the situation in the company, then he'd be unfit for his position as the president. Lucas felt relieved. He still had a lot to learn. He wanted to work hard and didn't want the working environment to be disrupted. Leo lowered his eyes and looked at him. Although his words were still as blunt as ever, there was an imperceptible indulgence in his tone. Just work hard in the company. Don't think about other things. Lucas curled up his lips, bent slightly, and said with a smile, yes, President. I will work hard. Next, Bangtian and Speed started a series of haggling over the contract. The project team gradually delegated power and handed over their tasks to the market and production departments below. Lucas was still very busy. While being busy with work, he didn't forget to prepare for the test from the Qin family. But Alexander only made one phone call to scold him and then there was no more news. Elena also didn't come to him as he expected. Not to mention 100 million, not even a single person was seen. Lucas couldn't help thinking that it was so easy to make money from this side business. He didn't have to do anything and could just lie down and collect the money. The dedicated Lucas was a bit uneasy. He even pondered over his acting before going to bed, but they were of no use. Just as he was thinking this, the stage for performance came. The group summoned Leo and Carter to a meeting. Before, Leo didn't want to deal with Carter and communicated with him only through subordinates. Now that the group required them to meet, there was no way to avoid it. Leo led his team to the headquarters building, which naturally included Lucas. This time when they came to the headquarters again, their state of mind was different. Everyone felt elated. So what if the group suppressed Shirwei? Shirwei still got the order. It had to be said that the group's actions this time had sown the seeds of discontent in the hearts of the people at Shirwei. The senior executives of Shirwei had some complaints about the group. However, this time everyone came to discuss cooperation, so they put away all their thoughts. But before they even entered the meeting room, they ran into people from Shirexyan. Carter walked at the front wearing a suit that couldn't hide his air of a hooligan. When he saw Leo, he forced a smile and said, nephew, I didn't expect that we would have a day of cooperation. Originally, the speed project was all mine. Since you want it so much, I'll reluctantly give you a little bit. The people from Shirwei showed anger on their faces after hearing this. Clearly, this production line is mainly led by Shirwei, but Carter preemptively said what they were going to say. Leo took a few steps and stood in line with Carter, towering over this step uncle by a head. Leo only asked one question, has Mr. Carter paid off his debt? Carter sank his face. Shirwei is helping Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter can hardly afford his loans. Shirwei wanted to bear the cost of the speed project alone, but unfortunately Mr. Carter didn't appreciate it. Shirwei had no choice but to work on it together with Shirexyan. Saying the same thing in reverse has a different meaning. The subordinates behind Leo lowered their heads and snickered. It is a well-known fact that Shirexyan has been in a slump in recent years. Leo had a cold expression and a flat tone. Mr. Carter should be careful. Go back and count how much of your loan is still outstanding. Don't let this project drag you down. Carter gritted his teeth and said, let's wait and see. After a round of verbal sparring between the two sides, they entered the meeting room together. After everyone was seated, the chairman Alexander entered the room. This time, Nolan was actually following behind him. Nolan tidied himself up today. He was wearing a jacket, still with black, framed glasses, and a small ponytail. No matter how you looked at it, he was out of place with the suit-clad people present. Lucas was slightly surprised and looked up at Nolan. At the same time, Nolan turned his head and winked at him. Before Lucas could react, Leo frowned. Lucas raised his head and wanted to take another look in that direction. Suddenly, he felt a hawk-like gaze, heavily scrutinizing him with an undeniable coercion and a condescending threat, as if it was going to see him through inside and out. Lucas was startled and lowered his head. The chairman was also looking at him. The chairman should know about their matter. Otherwise, he wouldn't have called to scold Leo. But what about Nolan? Does Nolan know? Lucas didn't dare to act rashly and did his work properly. Fortunately, the chairman couldn't argue with him in public. Soon the meeting got to the point. The chairman is bringing the R&D director this time to confirm something with Shearway. The order production of speed cars will be mainly handled by Shearway, but the charging module will be solely responsible for blcommunity, and the R&D center will provide guidance. They are determined not to let Shearway master the new technology. Leo is expressionless and the others in Shearway all look a bit unhappy. At this stage, the group still guards against them as if they were outsiders. Leo said, "It's okay, but the final assembly must be completed by Shearway." Alexander glanced at his youngest son and said, "Okay." Nolan raised the corner of his mouth with a casual and unruly smile on his face. Alexander was so straightforward because of the confidence Nolan gave him. Even if Shearway got the module for disassembly, they couldn't figure out the technology inside. With the matter settled, Carter finally felt relieved and his expression was very relaxed. Lucas once again felt the suffocating atmosphere of an overly meritorious subordinate intimidating the superior. He thought to himself, hasn't the chairman trusted Leo yet? Well, Leo has been single for so many years and suddenly said he likes men. Naturally, everyone will be suspicious. Lucas thought that since he was getting double the salary, he must do something for Leo. Next came some minor details. Leo asked his subordinate to hand over the materials. Lucas quickly took action, took out the documents from the data bag, stood up, walked to Leo's side, and handed the papers to him. Leo didn't even turn his head. He just raised his hand to take the document and suddenly felt his hand being touched. The warm and soft fingertips glided across his fingers, paused on the back of his hand, and then touched him ambiguously. 1, 2, 3. Forward, backward, and then forward again, just staying for 3 seconds. Leo turned his head and met Lucas's eyes. Lucas showed a faint smile, shyly lowered his eyes, and his eyelashes fluttered constantly. For a moment, he looked so charming and pitiful. Lucas handed the document into Leo's hand. The whole process took less than 5 seconds, but he did quite a few things. When he looked up after handing over the documents, his expression was serious and upright, and his attitude was respectful, just like the most dedicated secretary. If Leo hadn't been staring at him all the time, he would have thought he was hallucinating. Lucas returned to his own seat. Leo composed himself and continued to participate in the meeting discussion with the documents in hand. By the end of the meeting, at least one thing was clear: everyone could make money from the speed car project. None of the people from Shearway wanted to stay at the headquarters any longer, but Leo didn't rush to leave. He called Lucas to stop and said, "Secretary Lucas, come with me for a while." The others thought the president had something else to do and didn't think much of it. They just waited in place. Leo took Lucas towards the corridor. Even in the headquarters, no one dared to stop him. The two soon reached the end of the corridor. Just as Lucas was about to ask where they were going, Leo grabbed him and pushed him out directly through the door of the fire escape. He staggered back into the stairwell. Then Leo stepped forward, forcing him to lean against the wall of the stairwell. Lucas' back was tightly pressed against the wall. Leo's tall body loomed over him, pinning him between the wall and his chest. Lucas looked up blankly and saw Leo squinting at him. The light in the stairwell was very dim, casting shadows on Leo's handsome face and making his facial features even more distinct. The wall was cold, but the body in front of him was hot. The contrast was like ice and fire, making Lucas blush. "What were you doing just now?" Leo lowered his voice and asked in a low tone that only the two of them could hear. Lucas swallowed hard. After holding it in for a long time, he whispered, "I have to actively show myself. Otherwise, how could the chairman trust me?" Leo lowered his head. The two were so close that their breaths intertwined and were hard to separate. Leo said, "We're secret lovers." He emphasized the word secret, meaning that there was no need to do too much in public. Lucas looked at Leo's smooth jawline. With a blush on his cheeks, he said, "I know where to draw the line." Only the chairman, who was always paying attention to them, noticed. No one else found out. The subtlety in restraint and the unbearable longing in the forbidden zone. This is the essence of a secret love affair. There was a hint of pride in Lucas' tone. He raised his eyebrows and silently asked Leo with his eyes, "Did I act well?" Leo squinted his eyes even more, twitched his thin lips, snorted, and said, "You're playing with fire." Lucas clenched his fists tightly, looking for bearing, and turned his head away. Leo's gaze fell on his fair cheeks, which were tinged with a blush like jade at this moment. Leo's eyes became even deeper. Just then, the door of the fire escape suddenly opened and Alexander stood at the door, looking at them with a dark face. The position and distance between Leo and Lucas were very delicate. If you say they are clinging to each other, they aren't actually touching each other at all. If you say they aren't doing anything, they are unexpectedly standing so close. They were so close that as long as Leo lowered his head, he could kiss Lucas' hair. Alexander was on the verge of a heart attack. He once thought that if his youngest son were a playboy, he would support Leo to have a carefree life for a lifetime. Unfortunately, Leo wasn't. Leo was more self-disciplined and hard-working than anyone else, and his ability in business was amazing. Why did Leo have to be so outstanding? There was already an outstanding Nolan in the family. Just when Alexander, like others, thought that Leo only had the company and making money in his eyes and was so clean freak that he wouldn't touch anyone, Elena suddenly came home and cried to him. Leo liked men. He was even having an affair with his own secretary. Alexander's first reaction wasn't anger but a sense of absurdity. He didn't believe it. He knew his son well. After being lonely for 30 years, it was unlikely that he suddenly fell in love with someone, and that someone was a man. Alexander had met that young secretary. He clearly seemed to be extremely afraid of Leo. Could they be in a relationship? If so, he would have wasted his decades in the workplace. But Alexander finally softened his heart. He knew that Leo was showing weakness by doing this, so he called and scolded Leo, then agreed to let Yaoi take over the speed project. But there was still doubt in the bottom of his heart. It wasn't until today that he saw the young secretary seduce his son during a meeting. And Leo actually took the bait. Before they even left the headquarters building, Leo took the secretary to the stairwell and pinned him against the wall. What were they going to do if he hadn't come? Alexander turned livid with a complex mood. It was the first time he had seen Leo get so close to another person. Not even his mother could achieve this. Unexpectedly, the two of them turned their heads together and looked at Alexander, but neither of them moved. Alexander roared angrily, "Why don't you separate?" Leo took a step back to make some space. Lucas bowed and politely called out, "Chairman." Alexander wanted to scold them, but didn't dare to make a big deal out of it for fear of attracting others. He could only say fiercely, "Don't mess around in the company." Lucas put on a pitiful look and said in panic, "Chairman, we didn't do anything. You've misunderstood." He tilted his head and gently tugged at Leo's sleeve, saying, "Mr. Leo, please explain it to the chairman." Alexander got a headache just looking at this innocent-looking kid. He was fine when he saw him before. How could he become like this after hanging out with Leo for a year? Alexander glared at them and said, "Leave if you have nothing to do." After saying that, he left with his hands behind his back, looking in a bad mood. After making sure the chairman was far away, Lucas blinked and said, "That's it?" He left just like that. He had thought there would be a fierce showdown and had even prepared for it. Leo stood aside tidying his clothes and said coldly, "That's it. He hasn't figured out how to deal with me yet." No one knew his father better than Leo. On the one hand, Alexander was angry that his son was involved with the secretary. On the other hand, he thought it might be good if his son became more obedient this way. Alexander knew very well that, in the current situation, it was the best strategy to stay put. Lucas asked, "Does the chairman believe us?" Leo looked at him with deep eyes and said, "It doesn't matter whether he believes us or not. What matters is what he hopes for." Lucas sort of understood but not really. Leo turned his head to look at him and motioned, "Let's go." Lucas hesitated to speak. Leo commanded, "Speak." Lucas twitched the corners of his mouth and finally said, "Mr. Leo, your acting are really bad." The atmosphere was just right. The two of them were showing off their acting and were about to reach the dramatic peak. Suddenly, there came a line, "You're playing with fire." He almost couldn't hold back his laughter when he heard it. Where did Leo learn such cheesy domineering CEO quotes? Lucas said earnestly, "Mr. Leo, your mother won an Academy Award. Didn't you inherit any acting talent from her?" Leo said menacingly, "Shut up." He turned his head and didn't look at Lucas and said, "Go back first." This was the group's headquarters. It was really not a good place to talk. Anyway, they had shown the chairman everything he needed to see. The mission was accomplished, so it was time to retreat. When the two of them returned to the Shearway team, no one noticed anything amiss. Sure enough, the chairman didn't make a fuss. Back at the company, Leo became the iron-fisted and ruthless president again, and Lucas remained the secretary who always thought the president is always right. Just that today's president was especially picky. Lucas brewed the tea and brought it in. Leo took a sip and said, "What strange things did you put in it again?" Lucas was stunned for a moment and replied, "I just put ginseng slices, lemons, mint, and osmanthus flowers in turn." Leo criticized, "If you want to reduce internal heat, don't put anything in it. Understand?" For a moment, Lucas seemed to be back almost a year ago when he first came to the president's office. Leo was picky about everything and never spoke nicely. But Lucas was no longer the Lucas he used to be. He smiled and picked up the teacup again and said, "Sorry, Mr. Leo, I'll make another cup." He walked out, made another cup of tea, put it on Leo's desk, and said with a big smile, "Mr. Leo, please have some." Leo picked up the teacup and saw that it was just plain boiled water. Lucas smiled warmly like a gentle spring breeze. "There's nothing added, not even tea leaves." Leo raised his eyes and looked at him intently. There were other things to nitpick about, like making an extra copy of the documents, or that a certain part wasn't done well, or this area wasn't cleaned properly. Whatever Leo said, Lucas did with a smile on his face throughout. First-class attitude, a first-class secretary, leaving the president with no reason to get angry. The other assistants in the president's office saw this and exchanged glances with each other. Mr. Leo is torturing Secretary Lucas again. It's been a long time since I saw this scene. I miss it. Sometimes Mr. Leo treats Secretary Lucas quite well, but sometimes he exploits him mercilessly. Secretary Lucas is quite pitiful. Thank you, Secretary Lucas, for taking the president's anger for us. Lucas was already used to Leo's intermittent mood swings and also knew that the president was actually very vindictive and often openly abused his power for personal gain. The president won't reason with you. He was thinking about where he had offended the president, and the only thing that came to mind was what happened at the group headquarters in the morning. Was it because he improvised a performance in public? Or was it because he disliked Leo's acting? Lucas thought it was probably the latter. A domineering president won't allow others to say he's no good. Lucas felt a bit regretful. Usually in such situations, he would only complain in his heart. It was all because of the president's line, "You're playing with fire," that was so out of character, which made him couldn't help but blurt out his thoughts. Today, Leo got off work on time and walked right past Lucas. Lucas tidied up the inside and outside of the president's office as usual, making sure it was clean and tidy, and then closed the glass door and left. He took the elevator downstairs to the garage and walked to his car. He found Leo standing in front of his shabby little car, tall and straight, staring directly at him. Wait, why did he call his own car a shabby little car? Lucas silently berated himself in his heart for being influenced by bad company. He walked over and asked, "Mr. Leo, why are you here?" Leo didn't answer either. He just lifted his chin slightly, signaling Lucas to open the car door. Lucas had no choice but to open the car door and asked, "Leo, Mr. Leo, are you going to drive or be a passenger?" Leo directly got into the driver's seat. Lucas touched the tip of his nose and then got into the passenger seat. Leo said nothing from the moment he got in the car until he started driving. Lucas sensed the seriousness of the situation and didn't dare to make any jokes casually. He sat upright beside Leo, looking straight ahead at the road without squinting. The problem was that he didn't know where the president was going to drive the car. The temperature was gradually rising, and it was getting dark later during the day. At this time, there was still a faint glimmer in the sky, illuminating the city roads. Leo drove the car farther and farther away. Lucas had never been on this road before and felt a bit panicked. But after a while, he realized that this was the direction to Yunting Mansion. Although Lucas had never been there, he knew that Leo lived there. His heart finally settled down. As long as the president didn't drive to the wilderness to dispose of the body, Leo didn't drive the car directly back to Yunting Mansion but stopped on the way. This was a wealthy area with fewer people than in the downtown area. Leo parked the car on the opposite side of the road, and there was hardly anyone around. By this time, night had already fallen. The sky quickly darkened, and the street lamps were lit one by one, bringing a warm, yellowish light. Lucas still didn't dare to speak. He carefully turned his head and secretly glanced at Leo. Leo pursed his lips and stared ahead through the car window. Lucas steeled himself and took the initiative to admit his mistake. He said, "Mr. Leo, I shouldn't have said that your acting were bad. I wasn't thinking. Please don't be angry." Leo turned his head and looked at him meaningfully, saying, "You really shouldn't have said that, because your acting is also quite bad. It's too exaggerated and affected." He knew Leo would hold a grudge. The two of them looked down on each other and neither was willing to yield. But they didn't say a word and just stayed quietly in the car. The atmosphere didn't ease. Lucas realized that there was something else bothering Leo. Could it be because of the chairman? Previously, Lucas had great respect for Alexander, thinking it was amazing that he could control such a large group. Now that he knew Alexander's attitude towards Leo, he no longer respected or feared him. He could even act without any burden in front of the chairman. Favoritism can't be faked, and defensiveness can't be ignored. Even he, an outsider, felt it was unfair to Leo. What would Leo be thinking? Lucas took a deep breath and tried to comfort Leo. "Mr. Leo, there will surely be a way regarding the chairman. Please don't be sad." Leo interrupted him and denied his words. "It's not that." Lucas was confused. Then what was it? He said, "Mr. Leo, since we're on the same side now, please tell me any problems you have so that I can cooperate." Leo looked gloomy and finally spoke. "You touched my hand, so it was about this after all this time?" Lucas only then belatedly remembered the president's misophobia. He stammered and asked, "Did I make you uncomfortable?" Leo said, "A bit." The pride of the handsome man was hurt. Lucas added, "But you got so close to me in the stairwell later." Leo glanced at him and said, "That was the limit." No wonder the president only got close without taking further actions. At that time, Lucas even thought he was going to be pinned against the wall. Lucas suddenly felt a bit disappointed. At the same time, he thought it was really hard on the president. Leo couldn't quite explain what that feeling was. When Lucas touched his hand during the meeting, in an instant, many thoughts flashed through his mind, but disgust was not among them. Right after the meeting ended, he took Lucas to the stairwell. He wanted to confirm his feelings, but he just couldn't. Lucas was silent for a moment and said, "Then what should we do? Since we have to act, we will surely have intimate contact. Not to mention whether the chairman will continue to test us. We still have to deal with Miss Elena. We even saw Nolan today. God knows what Nolan and his uncle are thinking. When the time comes for intimate contact, if Leo shows a disgusted look, it will definitely expose our act. Moreover, just thinking about that scenario makes me a little hurt. Mr. Leo, we must plan ahead," Lucas said firmly. Leo asked, "How should we plan ahead?" Lucas thought for a while and asked, "Why does it seem that your misophobia is not that serious sometimes, and you can interact with people normally? The president's misophobia is a bit like Schrodinger's cat. It's okay when he doesn't think about it, but once reminded, he becomes very concerned. Leo said, I endure it and then go back to take a shower and change clothes. It's impossible not to communicate with people when doing business outside. Leo didn't tell Lucas that when his irritability builds up to the extreme, he will throw away all the things in the room. When he first took over Shearway, he often had outbursts. In recent years, as he has grown older, he has become much calmer. Lucas was in a dilemma and tentatively said to Leo, Do you want to try desensitization therapy? Leo raised his eyes and looked at Lucas. Even the psychiatrist can't do anything about him. What can Lucas do? The two were sitting in the car. Every time this happened, Lucas realized that the car he bought was really a bit small and didn't match the president's strong aura. He swallowed hard, cheered himself up, leaned over, and got closer to Leo. Leo lowered his eyes and watched his every move. Leo wasn't driving, and his hands naturally hung on both sides of his body. Lucas carefully placed his fingers on the back of Leo's hand. Strangely enough, it felt natural during the act this morning, but now he was so nervous that his heart was pounding. The fair fingers slid on the back of the hand, like a gentle breeze blowing and a feather kissing, soft and light, teasing the nerve endings and transmitting a subtle feeling to the central nervous system. Leo lowered his eyes, the end of his eyes showing a cold arc as he watched Lucas's movements. Lucas didn't dare to be too forceful. He carefully touched Leo and whispered, There will surely be many opportunities for us to get in contact in the future. It's better to get used to it in advance. He looked up, observing Leo's expression, and said, Get used to it little by little. Maybe slowly you'll be able to accept me. How are you feeling? Leo lifted his eyelids slightly. His deep-set eyes were terrifyingly black. Lucas was frightened by the emotions in his eyes and suddenly withdrew his hand, saying, Mr. Leo, if you feel uncomfortable, just say so. We can take it slow. There's no rush. Leo grabbed Lucas's fingers back and firmly locked them in his own palm. Lucas was held by him and was so stunned that he couldn't say a word. Leo tightly grasped the slender and slightly cool fingers and frowned slightly. This was exactly the feeling. It was like repeatedly cutting a terribly itchy spot with a knife. While it relieved the itchiness, it also brought pain. But if he didn't cut, the itchiness would twist and turn in his heart, which was another kind of pain. Leo's hands were very big. Wrapping around Lucas's fingers, they actually made Lucas's hands look slender and delicate. Lucas's face blushed uncontrollably. After a while, he whispered softly, Mr. Leo, it hurts a bit. He didn't mind Leo touching him more. As long as it could improve Leo's symptoms, he would do anything. It's just, the president was too strong. This feeling of being forcefully controlled was terrifying. Leo let go. Lucas withdrew his hand, which was congested because of being tightly pinched. Leo looked at the abnormal redness appearing on the originally fair skin. For a moment, he was in a daze and asked, Are you okay? Lucas blushed and shook his head. For a moment, there was complete silence in the car. Only the rustling voices of people and the sounds of vehicles came from the road outside the car. The air was sticky and ambiguous, but Lucas didn't think too much about it. He just thought that although the president would show a painful expression, he wasn't completely unable to be touched. He understood that most of the so-called misophobia was due to the repulsive mentality. If Leo regarded him as one of his own, the situation could be alleviated. Lucas took a deep breath and tried hard to make the blush on his face fade. He turned to Leo and said, President, this level is enough to overcome. Anyway, it's just acting. Like today, their acting were so bad. But the chairman still believed them, didn't he? But Leo turned his head and said, It's not enough. His voice sounded deep and ethereal. Leo said, You go to my house to familiarize yourself with the way. Lucas was stunned after hearing this. Leo continued, Saying we're lovers but you don't even know the way to my house. It doesn't make sense. Lucas thought it wasn't necessarily the case. The boss didn't necessarily take every lover home. He thought about Leo's previous image of being single and lonely, and thought it would be good to familiarize himself with the way. It could show how different this affair of the president was and attract the attention of the Chin family people. So Lucas said, "Okay then." He adjusted his sitting posture and said seriously, "It really doesn't make sense not to know the way at all. Let's go." Leo was stunned for a moment when he saw Lucas being so calm. He pursed his lips and started the car again. The car was driving in the just falling night. Soon they were near the Yunting mansion. Leo slowed down again. Lucas looked ahead through the car window and said, "Mr. Leo, I can already see it." This area was full of single-family villas, a typical low-density wealthy residential area. Lucas remembered that Leo lived in Building 3. Through the overlapping greenery, a corner of the modern-designed building in black, white, and gray emerged. It really lived up to being the president's house. It was hidden in the innermost part. Since he had seen it, the task was completed. Lucas said to Leo, "I've remembered the route." Then he looked at Leo eagerly, expecting him to stop the car. Leo said instead, "Don't you want to go in and sit for a while?" Lucas was extremely shocked. Everyone knows that the president is so fastidious and nitpicky that there isn't even a live-in housekeeper at home, and the housekeeping staff aren't allowed to stay in the house for long. Now that the president is asking him to go inside, how dare he? Seeing that Lucas was so scared that he didn't dare to say a word, Leo pulled the car over to the side of the road and said, "Another day then. It was really too hasty today." He wasn't well prepared. Leo got out of the car and gave the driver's seat to Lucas. He said coldly, "Go back early and have dinner early." Lucas nodded and said, "Mr. Leo, you too." Lucas moved to the driver's seat, waved to Leo, started the car, and turned the car around. When he left, he saw Leo standing by the road watching him off all the time. He felt a bit strange. Leo seemed different from usual today. He held the steering wheel. The strong touch just now left an undeniable feeling on his hand. Lucas took the time to rub his fingers on his clothes to suppress that feeling of being invaded and then concentrated on driving. Lucas originally thought that Leo's "another day" was just a casual joke. Just like when people meet on the road and say, "I'll treat you to dinner next time," and no one would take it seriously. Who would have thought that when the weekend was approaching, Leo called him to the office and informed him, "Come to my place tomorrow." Lucas stared wide-eyed. Leo looked up and asked, "Not willing?" Lucas replied instinctively, "Of course I'm willing." After saying that, he felt a bit regretful. Was he being too unreserved? Moreover, he was actually a bit scared. The president doesn't like others to touch him. Little does he know that it also takes courage to invade others' space. Lucas asked cautiously, "Mr. Leo, are you sure?" Compared with his hesitation last time, Leo today had obviously thought it over carefully. He said calmly, "I'm sure." Lucas didn't quite understand. Was it really necessary to go to such lengths? Leo saw what was on his mind and told him, "Someone has gone to investigate you. Do you know that?" Lucas was stunned and shook his head. "I don't know which side they're from. Anyway, they checked your file and inquired about your family situation. Is it really necessary? It's like a spy movie." Of course, Lucas has a clean record and isn't afraid of being investigated. He also understands that those people are afraid he has a background and worried that he's from other forces, specifically lurking beside the president to seduce the president. "So, are you going tomorrow?" Leo asked. Lucas replied very imposingly, "Yes." He answered briskly, but was a bit of a coward in private. After work, Lucas drove to the shopping mall and bought a gift for Leo. One can't go to one's superior's house empty-handed for the first time. After getting home, he took a good shower for fear that the president would dislike him. When lying in bed at night, Lucas tossed and turned and couldn't fall asleep. It was only with great difficulty that he finally fell asleep and had a hazy dream. He dreamed that he came to a dark castle. The castle was gloomy and terrifying, with dark green vines climbing all over the walls and ugly monster sculptures coiled on the roof. He stood at the door and stared at the pitch-black gate of the castle. After a while, the door opened, and Leo appeared wrapped in a black cloak. His handsome face was as pale as paper, his blood-red eyes stared at him, and he showed his sharp fangs. What a nonsense dream. He even found it speechless himself. Before going out, Lucas took another shower. As if infected by Leo's cleanliness fetish, he always felt that he wasn't clean enough no matter how much he cleaned. After doing all this, he finally took the gift and went out. As he said himself, he remembered the way since he had been there once. Soon he parked his car on the roadside in front of Building 3 of Yunting Mansion. He sent a message to Leo, and Leo told him to come in directly. Lucas took a deep breath, picked up his things, and got out of the car. Yunting Mansion isn't a traditional villa or small Western-style building, but a more modern independent building. Generally, there are 2 households on the first floor. Naturally, Leo bought both households and lived in the whole building alone. Lucas walked through the yard in front and came to the door of the house. The door opened, and Leo appeared at the door. Just like when he went to work on weekdays, he was wearing a shirt and suit pants, only without a tie. Lucas breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it wasn't the scene in his dream. "Good morning, Mr. Leo." Leo looked calm and said, "What time is it?" "It's not morning anymore." "Great." The familiar bickering made Lucas feel at ease. After saying these 2 sentences, the 2 fell silent together. They stood face to face with a door between them, and neither of them moved. Leo didn't step aside, and Lucas didn't say he wanted to go in. So the 2 of them were at a stalemate like this. After a long while, Lucas tentatively asked, "Mr. Leo, can I come in?" Leo gave a soft "hm." Lucas stretched out a leg and slowly stepped over the non-existent threshold and stepped on the doormat inside the house. While taking action, he observed Leo's expression and said, "Is this okay, Mr. Leo?" Leo nodded. Lucas had 1 foot inside the door and 1 foot outside. Keeping this posture, he asked Leo for his opinion one last time. "Is it really okay?" Leo got annoyed. "Stop dawdling. Come in quickly." Only then did Lucas enter the house. He stood still in the room, held out the gift in his hand in front of Leo, and showed a bright smile. "Thank you for inviting me here, Mr. Leo. I'm really happy." Nervous as he was, Lucas was really happy. He felt a sense of novelty like going on a spring outing. Seeing him like this, Leo softened his expression. Except for the housekeeper, Lucas was the first outsider to enter this house. To be honest, Leo did feel a bit uncomfortable. His independent private space was torn open, welcoming the invasion of an outsider. This feeling of his territory being polluted made Leo uncomfortable. Leo once regretted calling Lucas over, but Lucas's cautious and serious attitude at the door made him feel much more comfortable. He took the gift from Lucas and casually said, "Why did you bring something?" Lucas told Leo, "This is a fragrance. It's from the same brand as your usual perfume. It also has the same scent." Leo raised his eyebrows and said, "You're thoughtful." Lucas smiled. Lucas changed his shoes and followed Leo into the house. The place where Leo lived was more ordinary than Lucas had imagined. It wasn't that it wasn't luxurious or beautiful, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. The decoration mainly in light colors with dark, colored accents, top-quality materials, and elaborate decorations on the corners and tabletops created a comfortable living atmosphere. Lucas was a bit dazed. Even though it wasn't like the castle in his dream, he thought the place where Leo lived would have a cold-style domineering CEO vibe. Leo didn't lead Lucas to look around, and Lucas didn't dare to wander around casually. He sat down on the sofa in the living room. "Mr. Leo, this place is really nice. It suits your taste," Lucas flattered. Leo responded and said, "Don't be so polite in private. Don't keep using you so formally." Lucas nodded and said yes, but he sat there with his hands clasped, pinching his fingers from time to time. Leo knew he was nervous. Leo thought he should break this strange and tense atmosphere. So he asked, "Are all the schedules for next week arranged?" Lucas was taken aback for a moment and honestly replied, "Everything is arranged. There will be 3 meetings next week. The docking work with the conference service team has been completed, the location for the dinner has been decided, and all the necessary arrangements have been made." The 2 talked about work for a while and then fell silent at the same time. There's nothing more embarrassing than talking about work when visiting someone's home just because there's nothing else to say. Lucas racked his brains to think of a topic. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he asked warily, "Mr. Leo, could this place be under surveillance?" "Leo, what are you thinking? Have you watched too many spy movies?" Lucas smiled sheepishly. "I was still thinking that if the chairman was monitoring, I'd have to act even at home." As soon as the words were out of his mouth, Lucas realized something was wrong. Acting at home, what could he act? It was self-evident what would happen if a lover came to the house. He looked at the sofa under his buttocks in horror. This sofa was so big and wide that it would be no problem for two grown men to roll on it. Obviously, Leo also thought of it. He said crossly, "Don't think blindly. There won't be monitoring at home. At most, the news that you came to my place today will be on the chairman's desk tomorrow." Lucas touched his nose. His face was a bit red. He thought that since that was the case, he'd stay at the president's house a bit longer today to avoid arousing the chairman's suspicion. Leo looked at his slightly blushing face and said, "Let's have dinner." It was still a bit early for dinner, but they had nothing else to do. Leo led Lucas to the dining room. Lucas said bravely, "Mr. Leo, I brought a lunch box." He had expected to have a meal at the president's house and had made full preparations long ago. Leo turned around and stared at him. Lucas explained, "I can use the lunchbox to take some food and eat aside." Sometimes he really wanted to pry open the little secretary's head to see what was inside. He knew that Lucas was worried about his cleanliness fetish, so that he wouldn't have to use the household tableware. But how did he come up with the idea of bringing a lunchbox? Did he look like the kind of person who would let Lucas squat and eat with a lunchbox beside the table? Leo found that in Lucas' mind, he was like a stingy boss. With a gloomy expression, he directed Lucas, "We've eaten together before. Don't think about such nonsense. Sit down." Only then did Lucas sit down at the dining table. Cold dishes and tableware were already set on the table. There were still some hot dishes in the kitchen. Leo went to serve the dishes in person. Lucas stood up in a fright and said, "Mr. Leo, let me do it." Leo gave him a cold look and ordered, "Sit down. Don't move." Originally, his cleanliness fetish made him uncomfortable, but now seeing Lucas being so jumpy, he ignored his discomfort and was occupied by other emotions. Compared with his obsessive-compulsive disorder, Lucas's cautious attitude of being afraid of touching his nerves makes him even angrier. This is a combined attitude towards a superior and a patient. Lucas is both afraid of him and sympathetic to him. Leo is extremely stifled. A breath is stuck in his chest, and he almost forgets his obsessive-compulsive disorder. Leo enters the kitchen with a straight face. Lucas sits down nervously, watching the president bustling around. He feels as if there are needles pricking under his buttocks and can hardly sit still. Leo arranges the dishes and then sits down at the table. The number of dishes is obviously more than the amount that two people can eat. There is a wide variety of them, which can be called sumptuous, making Lucas feel flattered. Leo picks up a piece of beef tenderloin and puts it in Lucas's bowl, saying, "Eat." Lucas is even more surprised. He lowers his head and takes a bite of the juicy beef. Touched, he says, "It tastes really good. Mr. Leo, your chef is really good at cooking." Leo responds with a grunt but doesn't tell Lucas that he asked the housekeeper to buy a batch of fresh ingredients and put them in the refrigerator yesterday. He got up early this morning and spent a long time preparing a table of dishes waiting for Lucas to come. Just thinking about Lucas's attitude makes him angry. Leo picks up 2 more chopsticks of goose meat and stuffs it into Lucas's bowl, saying fiercely, "Eat more." The roast goose has a crispy skin. Different from the steak, it also tastes very good. As the secretary of the president's office, Lucas usually has no shortage of dinner parties and has eaten a lot of delicious food. But it's different from the taste at home after all. He has been struggling alone in the big city. Usually, he just makes do. He never expected to eat the long-missed home, cooked food at the president's place. It's just that the specifications and ingredients of this home-cooked food are obviously several levels higher than those of ordinary families. Lucas has a sudden thought. Since the president doesn't mind, he won't either. He reaches out his chopsticks to pick up some dishes and clumsily puts them on the plate in front of Leo, curling his lips and smiling. "Mr. Leo, you eat too." Leo's anger is inexplicably melted in Lucas's smile. On the surface, he remains calm, but the sharpness in his eyes is gone. The corners of his lips are raised a few degrees, but it's just not obvious. After the meal, Lucas wants to clear the table and wash the dishes. Leo glances at him and asks, "Are you a dishwasher?" Lucas has no choice but to give up and follows Leo back to the first-floor hall. It's still early. Lucas estimates that he will have to spend more time at the president's house. But what should he do after a full meal? We surely can't keep talking about work. Lucas could only ask, "Mr. Leo, what do you usually do at home?" Leo replied, "Work out and read the news. It must be financial news." Thinking about it, Leo's life is quite boring. It's all about work and nothing else. He doesn't have many friends either. While other rich kids live a life of debauchery, Leo only goes to the bar during business entertainments and always insists on a private room. Leo threw the question back, "What about you?" Lucas said, "Surf the internet and play games." It's also quite boring. The two of them were sitting on the sofa, asking and answering questions, looking just like a pair of blind date partners who had nothing to talk about. Lucas was a bit frustrated. During the Chinese New Year, the president clearly had a lot to say, and they could chat for over an hour. What's going on today? There seemed to have been such situations before. He felt an indescribable awkwardness. It was as if there were claws scratching at his heart. He wanted to act naturally and generously, but he just couldn't. These two people who were usually eloquent seemed like idiots at this moment. But Lucas was reluctant to leave. Since he finally got to Leo's house, he was determined to stay a while longer. It wasn't until Leo said, "Let's watch a movie." Lucas immediately felt relieved and said, "Okay." The two of them moved to the audio-visual room. Leo pulled the curtains and turned off the lights. The room immediately became dim. He turned on the projector and asked Lucas, "What do you want to watch?" Lucas, of course, said, "Anything is okay." So Leo played a drama. As the movie unfolded, Lucas sat on the sofa in the audio-visual room and let out a sigh of relief. At least he didn't have to stare blankly at the president anymore. It was only through today that Lucas realized how awkward it was to develop a personal relationship with the president. He originally wanted to visit with a friend's mindset, but found it didn't work. Leo was inherently more perceptive than ordinary people. Lucas felt that since he entered this house, he had been walking on a tightrope and couldn't relax at all. Lucas couldn't figure out why this was so. He himself knew that sometimes he was quite unrestrained in front of Leo, so why couldn't he do it today? Vivid figures were leaping on the snow-white projection wall. Although the movie plot was compact, Lucas just couldn't get into it. After a while, he finally figured it out. On his first visit to the president's residence, he hoped to leave a good impression on Leo. He hoped that Leo would think he was polite, considerate, and likable. That's why he was so cautious. After figuring it out, Lucas blushed again. Moreover, he couldn't control it. His face was getting hotter and hotter, as if it were going to burn out all his embarrassment. He had been blushing a lot recently. He didn't know why. Maybe it was because the temperature was rising. Blushing, he bit his lip and closed his eyes. It wasn't that the movie wasn't good. He just wanted to calm down. He didn't sleep well all night last night, and combined with the high tension just now, Lucas felt dizzy in his head. He couldn't help closing his eyes and resting for a while. At this time, Leo beside him moved. The sofa deformed slightly due to Leo's movement. He turned over and carefully looked at Lucas, as if to confirm whether the person beside him was asleep. Lucas didn't know what was wrong with himself. Without opening his eyes, he simply pretended to be asleep. After sleeping for a while, the whole afternoon passed. Leo looked at Lucas for a while, and suddenly leaned forward a bit more. Even with his eyes closed, Lucas could feel the sense of oppression. Then his hand was touched. Lucas didn't move. Leo lowered his eyes, looking at the fair and slender fingers, his lips tightly pursed. That day in the car, the touch of those fingers had lingered in his mind. Leo reached out his hand, hooked Lucas's finger, and gently held his whole hand in his palm. Pretending to be asleep, now he was sound asleep. Even if thunder struck him, he wouldn't wake up. Who would have thought that Leo would be insatiable? Not only did he hold his hand, but he even inserted his fingers between Lucas's, and the two clasped their fingers together. The soft spaces between his fingers were rubbed by another person's fingertips, bringing a shivering feeling. The blood involuntarily rushed to Lucas's cheeks and even climbed up to his ears. Fortunately, the lights were off in the audio-visual room, so it was hard to see the blush on his face. Leo held Lucas's hand and sighed inwardly. It was this feeling, both repulsive and reluctant, stimulating every nerve. At first, it seemed uncomfortable and painful, but upon closer inspection, it was actually a bit exhilarating. It was addictive. Leo was satisfied, but Lucas was in a turmoil inside. Was the president undergoing desensitization therapy? Should he cooperate? But there was no need to go as far as clasping fingers, right? He was nervous and coy. His back was almost soaked with cold sweat, and the space between their clasped fingers was also hot, humid, and sticky. But Leo seemed not to notice and still held on to him tightly. Lucas thought that this couldn't go on like this. He had to remind the president. So he moved a little, pretending to be too hot in his sleep and trying to break free from the restraint. As soon as he moved, Leo was startled. Thinking that he was awake, Leo leaned over to check on his situation. The sofa in the audio-visual room is too soft. The part in contact with the backs of the two people sinks again. Lucas was just pretending to be asleep and didn't exert any strength. At this moment, his body slumped softly following the deformation of the sofa and fell towards Leo. He pressed against Leo's arm, and his head landed on Leo's shoulder. Forget it, just keep pretending to be asleep. Leo was obviously also stunned by this unexpected situation and stiffened there without moving. Lucas felt ashamed inside. He was too embarrassed to open his eyes, and it was not good for him to move again, so he could only continue to pretend to be asleep. After a moment, Leo moved. Lucas thought the president was going to push him away. After all, the president had a cleanliness fetish. But Leo didn't. He just relaxed his back and slowly leaned back, making Lucas lean more comfortably. It's so awkward. It's not the way I thought. What's even more annoying is that Leo didn't let go of his hand from beginning to end. So the two of them held hands and leaned on each other on the sofa. Lucas could only silently recite in his heart that it's okay. As long as he wasn't embarrassed, the embarrassed one would be someone else. Moreover, it's quite comfortable to lean on the president's shoulder. The height is just right. There's a layer of muscle attached to the strong bones. It's neither too soft nor too hard. It's not a bad deal to use the president as a pillow. Lucas was doing mental self-construction and self-numbing. As he thought about it, he actually fell asleep. It's all because the atmosphere here is so good. Leo was sitting on the sofa. The fluffy head was leaning on his shoulder. The soft hair would occasionally touch his neck with the rhythm of breathing, like a small knife stabbing at his heart. He should have pushed the junior secretary away, but he didn't. He began to like this self-abusing feeling. The audio-visual room was dim. Only the projector was working hard to play the video images. But no matter how hard it worked, neither of the two people in the room appreciated it. One was sleeping soundly, and the other was absent-mindedly in a daze. After a long time, Lucas finally had enough sleep. He groaned and slowly opened his eyes. It's so comfortable to sleep. What kind of pillow is this? I'll buy one and put it at home next time. Just as he was thinking this, he suddenly came to his senses. He blinked his eyes quickly and found that he was still in that position, leaning on Leo's shoulder. Even their hands were still clasped together. He could no longer pretend. He had to sit up, put on a shocked look, looked at Leo and said, "Why did I fall asleep?" Leo looked at him intently. Lucas quickly said, Sorry, Mr. Leo. I didn't do it on purpose. I was just too sleepy. He lowered his head and was greatly surprised when he saw their clasped hands. Cheen, Mr. Leo, what's going on? He originally thought that Leo would probably say it was desensitization therapy, and then he would just brush it off with some casual remarks. But unexpectedly, Leo said, "You grabbed my hand and leaned on me when you felt sleepy." He was just asleep, not out of his mind. The president is actually so brazen as to shift the blame onto others. Lucas found himself at a loss for words. He couldn't admit to faking sleep, so he could only say resentfully, "Well, I'm really sorry. I probably have somnambulism." Saying that, he pulled his hand out of Leo's palm. The air took the opportunity to get into the gap, bringing a slight chill and making both of them startled at the same time. Lucas stood there stunned. Leo turned on the light, exposing his rosy face to the light. The movie had ended long ago. At this time, the audio-visual room was completely silent. Only the two of them were sitting on the sofa looking at each other. Lucas murmured, "What time is it now?" Leo said, "It's 4 o'clock. It's already 4 o'clock. The time should be enough. Tomorrow when the chairman gets the report, it will say." Mr. Leo and his secretary closed the curtains and stayed in the audio-visual room for the whole afternoon. A whole afternoon is enough time to do many things, which is bound to make people have wild speculations. Lucas originally wanted to propose to leave, but accidentally saw the small bookshelf beside the sofa. There were some antique-level videotape boxes on the bookshelf. It seemed that the president was still a movie enthusiast. In contrast to those collectible films, there were several books placed beside them. The covers of those books were gaudy, looking not so decent. Lucas subconsciously reached out and picked up a book. After seeing the title, he fell silent. It turned out to be a domineering CEO novel. He asked the CEO with difficulty, "Mr. Leo, why do you read this kind of popular literature?" Leo replied naturally, "When you mentioned 100 million last time, I found a few books for reference to see what the quotes in them are." Lucas was speechless. Leo continued, "It has quite a sociological significance, reflecting the simple and unrealistic wishes of the working people." Lucas was stunned for a moment and asked, "What wishes?" Leo, "The domineering CEO falls in love with me." Finally, Lucas left Building 3 of Yunting Mansion before dinner. It would be embarrassing to eat 2 meals. However, the food at the CEO's house was really delicious, and he would surely miss it in the future. Thinking carefully, he didn't do much this day, but Lucas felt that it was eventful enough. After experiencing all kinds of embarrassing situations, his skin had thickened a few centimeters. When he lay in bed at night, he was still savoring the feeling of Leo's shoulder. It really lived up to being the muscles and bones of a capitalist. The combination was more comfortable than his pillow. It was a pity that it was invaluable, and he would never be able to rest his head on it again. Come to think of it, Leo didn't push him away all afternoon and even held his hand. So it should mean that Leo wasn't that repulsed by him anymore, right? Leo has psychological cleanliness. Maybe he can overcome it through gradual contact. Actually, there was another embarrassing point that Lucas never mentioned, which was that he was gay. Leo was just pretending to like men, while he was a complete homosexual. So every time Leo touched him, he would blush. Lucas knew that the CEO didn't do it on purpose, so he could only silently build a defense in his heart. If Leo became aware of the sexual orientation issue, it would only be more embarrassing. On Monday, Lucas went to work as usual. Like usual, Leo kept a straight face and unburdenedly bossed him around and exploited him. Lucas quite admired Leo for this. When others tried to get on his good side, he clearly distinguished between public and private matters. When he wanted to make things difficult for others, he abused his power for personal gain. He openly practiced double standards. Lucas didn't mention what happened on the weekend again, which inadvertently relieved his own burden. He could calmly face Leo in the office, but whenever he recalled the awkward atmosphere at Leo's home, he felt extremely embarrassed. He was still more used to the president who exploited him. Maybe he had been brainwashed. Anyway, they had dropped so many smoke bombs that those who were paying attention to Leo should believe their act by now. The speed project was also progressing smoothly. Shirexyan was on high alert and was determined not to disclose the key technology to Shirwei. Shirwei got the product sample, and as expected, they couldn't find anything after disassembling it. Apart from that, the cooperation was going smoothly. As long as Mr. Carter didn't jump out to court criticism, everything would be calm. Both work and life were becoming stable. Lucas couldn't help but wonder if things had just passed like this. No one had ever criticized Leo directly. Even when the chairman directly caught them, he didn't say anything harsh. Ms. Elena didn't come to offer him 100 million either. I don't know if it was Lucas's illusion, but the people of the Qin family seemed a bit afraid of Leo. They never clashed with Leo directly. Whether their intentions were good or bad, they always made veiled remarks self-righteously. A strange family pattern. After a few days, Lucas finally received an invitation from someone in the Qin family, but it wasn't from Ms. Elena, but from Nolan. Nolan wanted to meet him alone. Even Nolan didn't want to confront Leo directly. Lucas was surprised. After thinking for a while, he knocked on the door of the president's office, walked in and told Leo, "Mr. Leo, Director Nolan has invited me to meet him." Leo lifted his eyelids slightly. "Got it. Go ahead." Lucas was a bit nervous. "Why is it Director Nolan? What does he want from me?" It should have been Ms. Elena instead. Leo didn't answer but instead asked, "What do you call him?" Lucas said helplessly, "I call him like this just to make a distinction." Leo said, "Don't call him so intimately." "All right." Lucas could only ask, "When I meet Director Qin then, how should I respond?" Leo showed no emotion and said, "Whatever. Anyway, no matter what he says, don't agree." Lucas could only go to meet Nolan with this instruction from Leo. Nolan was very considerate. He found a tea house not far from Shirwei, which also had good privacy. At such a close distance, the two brothers still didn't want to meet each other. Nolan was still dressed the same way. Lucas admitted that this person was more suitable for the laboratory than the negotiation table. Nolan asked Lucas to take a seat and looked at him with a beaming smile. Lucas wasn't sure if the rumor that Leo liked men had reached Nolan's ears. He could only get straight to the point. "Director Qin, what do you want from me?" Nolan said with a smile. "Can't I just want to see a beauty?" He sighed. "Director Qin, if you keep talking like this, our conversation won't be able to proceed." Nolan blinked and looked at him through his black-framed glasses. "I'm telling the truth. The first time I saw you, I felt deeply sorry. How did such a beauty end up with Leo?" When they first met, Mr. Leo's rumor hadn't broken out yet. Lucas wasn't sure what Nolan meant and didn't know if these words were a test. Lucas frowned tightly. Nolan smiled and said, "Don't be nervous. I won't eat you." It's really impossible to continue the conversation. Just when Lucas was thinking about how to end the meaningless chat, Nolan suddenly said, "I can disclose the charging technology to Shirwei." The topic jumped too fast. Lucas was startled. Regardless of Nolan's intention, since he mentioned this matter, Lucas couldn't let it go. Lucas straightened up and asked seriously, "What are Director Qin's conditions?" Nolan smiled and said, "Sure enough, you're a businessman. You start talking about conditions right away. Actually, it's nothing much. I just hope that Shirwei can give more benefits to Shirexyan. This speed incident is, on the one hand, to suppress Shirwei, and on the other hand, to save Shirexyan. Old Wang can hardly hold on anymore." Lucas fell silent after hearing Nolan's words. He remembered Leo's instructions. Leo knew Nolan's intention from the start and never intended to agree. Lucas said, "Shirwei refuses." Nolan looked at him with great interest and asked, "Aren't you going back to discuss it with Leo?" Lucas said, "There's no need to discuss." He smiled. "Isn't it precisely because you didn't hold out much hope that you're putting forward conditions so casually, Director Qin? Otherwise, they would be at the negotiation table instead of in a tea house." Nolan said, "That's why I don't like dealing with businessmen. Since Leo would rather be stuck with the technology than help Sherexian, then so be it. Nolan changed the topic again. Actually, I came to see you today on behalf of the Fu family to assess you. Lucas blinked. The Fu family, the family of Nolan's mother. My uncle is naturally suspicious. He always thinks that Leo's sudden move is a precursor to a snake coming out of its hole. Nolan said with a smile and asked, Lucas, what do you think? Lucas pretended to be stupid. I'm just a secretary. I don't know what's on Mr. Leo's mind. Nolan smiled meaningfully. Aren't you his lover now? Lucas thought it was a miscalculation. He lowered his eyes. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. His expression was a bit melancholy yet a bit happy. He said, Why mention my identity? Although I'm by Mr. Leo's side, I can't do everything. Nolan watched him act as if he had discovered a new continent and asked, Then what should I say when I go back to report? Lucas smiled faintly and said, I can't influence your thoughts, Director Cheen. Just report what you've seen. Nolan commented, It's boring. This young master is somewhat unusually moody. Nolan only likes to tease others but doesn't like others to treat him in the same way. Seeing that Lucas was starting to get familiar with his tricks, he lost interest and said, Forget it. Considering you're a great beauty, I'll still give you some intelligence. Looking into Lucas's eyes, he said, The Fu family spent a great deal of effort on the chairman back then. In their eyes, this was like a long-term investment. No investor would like the object of their investment to break free from their control, nor would they allow the other party to kick them out. There was pity and sympathy in Nolan's eyes. Leo still has a long way to go. After Lucas returned, he told Leo exactly what Nolan had said. After hearing this, Leo showed no reaction. He just said, Those who don't do business on the front line just don't understand. They take everything for granted. After his comment, he put this matter out of his mind and said to Lucas, Since speed is on the right track, the production department just needs to complete the rated task step by step, so we can spare some time to do something else. This wording is easy to misunderstand. Leo put his hands on the office desk, looked at Lucas and said, At the end of last year, I asked you to make a statistical report on the workload of the assistant. Lucas nodded. He remembered that he had worked overtime and was extremely tired at that time. Leo said, Combining your report and my observation during this period, I'd like to make some adjustments to the personnel in the president's office. Lucas was slightly stunned. He quickly realized that the president was going to take action against the personnel. He immediately said, I understand. I'll cooperate with you. Leo looked at him and said, Aren't you afraid that I'll adjust you too? Lucas said seriously, There's nothing I can do. I can only count on my side job income. Leo was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He pursed his lips and said, Don't neglect your side job. You may be needed to work at any time, but you can't neglect your main job either. He took out a document from the drawer and threw it in front of Lucas. This is the personnel change plan. Go and investigate further to see if it's feasible. If it is, implement it further. Lucas was shocked. This meant that the personnel decision-making power was being handed over to him. He said cautiously, Mr. Leo, this may not be appropriate. Such matters should be handled by James. James was the one who acted as the office director in the president's office. Last time when he bypassed James to complete the president's task, it had already made James unhappy. Leo said, He's on the pending list. Lucas was stunned. There are 2 pending candidates, so I need you to confirm. Leo looked at him. You've been with me for a year. Can't you even handle this? Lucas knew the president was giving him another tough task. He picked up the stack of materials and said, I understand, Mr. Leo. I'll handle this matter well. Only then was Leo satisfied. He nodded and said, You go ahead with your work. I'm going to throw a catfish into the pond of the president's office first. Whenever it came to work, the president always acted quickly. Lucas asked, Catfish? Leo said, You'll know when you see. The next day, A new employee was transferred to the president's office. Lucas looked at the newcomer and understood the president's intention. The woman was wearing a suit. She was neat and efficient, but she didn't smile and looked rather unhappy. She walked into the president's office, stood in front of her workstation, and greeted everyone. Her voice was a bit cold. "I'm a new employee transferred from the marketing department. My name is Nora. Please give me your guidance." This Nora was an old colleague of Lucas from the administrative department. She had once been deceived by Chloe and reported on Lucas.